Good evening and welcome to Information Please, your Peoria Public Library on the air, bringing you information about your library and your community. And this evening I'm privileged to have Ross Black, who's the Community Development Director for the City of Peoria. Hi, Ross.
Hi there.
Thanks for taking time out to come and talk because, of course, this is a great way for people to get to see who you are, and you can tell us immediately when I have questions about what's going on with your department, which is pretty new. It's old components, you've remixed them into a new soup. So tell me how that happened and when.
Sure. About a year and a half ago, the decision was made by the city manager with the approval of the city council to combine three existing departments of the city: the old planning and growth management department, the inspections department, and the economic development department. So taking these three departments, there are various components within the departments. Within the inspections department, there is code enforcement. Those are the people that are out there making sure that there's no litter and garbage and junk cars, etc.
Right.
Housing code violations, etc. That's code enforcement. Also within the inspections department is the building inspections function, which, although the building inspectors also deal with issues related to deteriorated commercial structures, 90% of their time is spent either reviewing plans or permit applications for new construction or for improvements to existing properties, or making field inspections. So as you see a new house going up or a new building going up, the plans for that structure have been reviewed by the building inspections division, and then the ongoing inspections as the house or building is built. The field inspections are done also by our building inspectors, who actually, I've got a couple of them right now over in Washington helping out with all of the permits and everything else that is happening over there, as no one really knows quite what the demand level is going to be, and Washington only has one part-time building inspector, so they need a little bit more assistance. So
yeah, that's wonderful that we can help them.
Yeah, any help we can provide. The city's had an awful lot of staff over there from police and fire and public works and community development over the last couple of weeks, and we'll continue to make that partnership available. So that's the old inspections department. The economic development department is a department that sort of went from 7 or 8 people down to really only one person over the last few years through a series of budget cuts and retirements. And economic development really deals with a variety of items, but to encapsulate it, it's really people who want to either open a business here in Peoria, or existing businesses that want to expand or to relocate within Peoria. So we're in the process right now of working with our economic development division to try and expand their role again. We've added some personnel back, and in 2014 we're going to have a rollout of a brand new economic development plan that will include business visits where we go out and we talk to existing businesses in town, just really sort of a meet and greet. How are you doing? Is there anything we can do to help you out? If you're thinking of expanding, please let us know. We have resources and we can help you out. So that's economic development. The old planning and growth management department consisted of our zoning people who deal with, again, new construction mostly, but also changes or expansion to existing buildings, but not the structure itself, but the legal use of the land, and then issues such as setbacks and parking requirements and so on and so forth. They also deal with long-range planning. So if we do a neighborhood plan or a business corridor plan, or if someone wants us to come out and talk to the neighborhood association about changes that could be made to their neighborhood, then the planners would be involved in that. The other component within the old planning and growth management department is our neighborhood and grants function. So a lot of the federal grants and some state grants that come to the city of Peoria on an annual basis are managed through that division, and in effect, in many ways it's a pass-through. We receive funds for homeless programming and social service programming, and so the funds come to the city. We go through the process of making decisions with council approval in terms of which agencies will receive funds, and then we monitor and audit the organizations that actually offer the funds. And then in addition to that, we have some in-house programs that deal mostly with housing rehabilitation for low-income people who need a furnace, a new roof, et cetera, et
Yeah, a
cetera.
window.
So the thought behind combining these three departments really was that all three of them are involved in the development process.
Yes.
And they're different parts of the development process, but there's a need to really interact. And while the departments worked well together before they were one department, in order to really streamline the development process, we needed to get them together as one department. So we have about a year under our belt. We have made changes in the way the process works. We've made changes in sort of a lot of the back office items that the public probably wouldn't see when they come in and interact with any part of the community development department. But we have a ways to go. It's not easy taking three very separate organizations and crunching them together, and you don't flip a switch and everything's there. So we will continue to move through 2014 with changes that will hopefully get us well down the road towards one good unified department.
That'd be great. Well, and I think that this probably came as a result of, in the past, there were a lot of complaints about how difficult it was to work on things. And I think the city council and the city really listened and is trying to streamline this. Now, do you go out and look at examples of other cities? Like when we rebuilt the libraries, we studied libraries, in cities our size all across the country and looked at cutting edge, work practices and all. Is that the kind of thing you're doing as well? Sure,
absolutely. We've looked at the best examples, the best practices in terms of development departments, community development departments. One of the items, and not only what other cities are doing, but also what private industry is doing in terms of customer service, because that's really the core of what we're doing. We want to provide a good customer atmosphere for the citizens of Peoria who come in and interact with this department. And in order to do that, we need to not only look to what the public sector is doing, but also the private sector. And so a lot of the aspects and the changes that we've made and that we continue to make into 2014 are built on both. And for example, one of the things that we did almost immediately, and it's been open now for about 9 months, is we have a development center within City Hall. So it's a room in City Hall on the 3rd floor, and it's the geographic place where people go if they want to get a permit to build something in Peoria or to repair something. Whereas in the past, depending upon what you wanted to do, you might have to go to various different offices. And
so it's a one-stop shop.
It's a physical one-stop shop. And what we've moved away from is a situation where someone may start in Office A and get a piece of paper and then have to go to Office B and then go to C and then go back to A and then go pay somewhere else. And what we've done is we've pulled all of this together into one physical location. We continue to tweak that. We're going to have some changes rolled out early next year just in the setup of the room and who's in the room in terms of the questions that need to be answered to make sure that they're there. But the concept behind it was the customer comes to one location, and if they have a question about a permit or they have a question about a project, then the city staff person will come to them rather than having customers wander all over City Hall trying to find the right person. So hopefully it's a much more customer-friendly atmosphere for the residents to be in. It means that city employees are walking more, but maybe that's good for our health care plan anyway.
Not sitting behind the chair all the time.
But it's really it's what other cities are doing in terms of streamlining applications instead of simple little things that probably aren't flashy and most people would miss. But instead of you need to fill out 4 pieces of paper for an application, we've crunched that down to 1 piece of paper, because a lot of our applications ask for duplicate information. Every application you fill out starts with name, address, address of the property that you want to do the work on, telephone number, email address. Well, there's no reason to fill that out multiple times. That doesn't change. And so just by making some of these small changes, hopefully we're edging towards where we need to be.
Great. So how many permits, I mean, how many people are you interacting with in whatever time period you can think of?
Sure.
You know?
We issue literally thousands of permits a year. I mean, depending upon the year and depending upon the different types of permits. And, you know, permits are one of these items that we try not to necessarily track the total number of permits because they're very different. Someone could come in and they could get an electrical permit because they want to put up a security light on the exterior of their house. Well, that's a relatively simple permit. That's a permit we issue over the counter. On the other hand, someone could come in to get a building permit for, you know, for example, the jump trade training center that OSF built, you know, multi-story building. Well, that's a building permit. So, but they both count as one permit, but they're very different.
Very different.
So one of the items we do track that I think is a good indicator of the overall activity within Peoria is the number of single-family residential permits. You know, the number of houses single-family houses coming out of the ground. And, you know, this year so far we've issued 156 new single-family homes. Last year we did a total of 212 for the entire year. So based upon the sort of pushing this forward, we'll probably be close to that again for 2013. And both 2012 and 2013 were far above where we were before that as we sort of went through the recession. You know, back in 2009 we issued 132, 2010 was 150. 2011 was 130, and then up to the 212, and then we're probably on pace for right around 200 again this year. So I think overall, if single-family housing construction is sort of an indicator of the economic health for at least that sector, if not for the entire community, we're certainly on the upward swing again. I mean, a lot of the pent-up demand that existed.
Because people were waiting and
people were waiting.
Weren't sure if they had a secure job or
right. So I think
was going to happen.
I think we're in good shape there.
Okay. Well, let's look away from homeowners a little bit and let's talk about your sweep of the Southern Gateway area. What's that all about? Doing a sweep.
Sure. Well, you know, there are areas. All areas of the city are important. Let me start with that first statement. The Southern Gateway, which is Adams Street, coming in from Bartonville from the 474 interchange, and then splitting to Adams, Washington, and Jefferson. Not only is it a very well-traveled route, but it's also the route that most people take when they're coming in from the airport.
Yes.
So if someone is going to downtown Peoria and they landed at the airport, they're most likely going to come through that corridor. It's an industrial corridor for the most part. Certainly until you get to the warehouse district, it's an industrial corridor. I don't think it's going to be anything but an industrial corridor for at least the foreseeable future.
Right. It's too embedded. It's been that way forever.
It's been that way forever. Every city of Peoria size needs an industrial area, and that's where it is. And it grew up there because of access to the river.
And the railroad.
And the railroad and the river and the railroads are still there. So
yes,
it's probably not going
anywhere.
People are
still using them.
Right. But it doesn't mean that it needs to be run down and to be frank, crappy looking.
Yeah.
And so
junkyards with, you can see the piles.
Yes, exactly. I mean, all of the stuff that goes along with that, the deterioration of the public infrastructure and then particularly the private properties. And so what we did was earlier this year, just a couple of months ago, we brought in several crews from the Public Works Department and then crews from the Community Development Department, our code enforcement people, and our building inspectors. And we literally started at the city limits with Bartonville, and we started pushing toward downtown. And our Public Works guys went out there and did a fantastic job, a lot of it with hand tools, scraping weed out of the sidewalks and the curbs. They had the street sweepers down there. They really cleaned all of that up, tore down some old fences on property that the city recently purchased so that we could have control of an old junkyard and then fix it up. Our code enforcement people went through and issued warnings for deteriorated buildings, fences, etc. Building inspectors went through and looked at the commercial structures and did the same thing. So very successful. A lot of people, a lot of activity in one area over about a week, week and a half time. We're still working on this. It's not as obvious anymore because now we're sort of in the follow-up point where the people who decided not to accept the warning notice to fix up their property, now unfortunately we're at the point where we have to issue tickets and take them to court to try and cause them to fix up their properties, which is obviously, it's a much longer process.
Yes.
It's not something that we enjoy doing, but unfortunately we don't have a lot of choice there. But the goal really is that as people come into Peoria from the south, they're going to drive through an area that's clearly an industrial area. It's not going to be a golf course. There's no question about that.
But it can still look nice.
It can look nice. It can look well kept. It doesn't, the buildings shouldn't be falling down. There shouldn't be litter and garbage all over the place. There shouldn't be junk cars outside of the junkyards.
Yeah.
And even
they can have fences.
Yes, even the junkyards, we can put up some fences. We can screen some of this out. So that's the Southern Gateway Sweep. We hope that we can do more of these next year in different parts of the city. We probably have the staffing to be able to do 3, maybe 4 a year. So maybe on a quarterly basis, we pick another area of the city, maybe an entryway, maybe just a heavily traveled commercial corridor, and really focus on that.
And so that's the focus, is to have as you're driving through Peoria, to have the heavily traveled routes or the place where you enter the city look better, look nicer. Sometimes that happens, on its own. One business will spruce things up and then the people next to them do, because now it's worth it. Sometimes that doesn't happen. The Southern Gateway has been that way for a long time. I know I've been involved with discussions with the Southern Gateway for years and years and years, hearing about it. So of course we've got our Lincoln branch, which is in the south end, which we worked so hard to make a really beautiful island.
Yes.
And the hope is that the properties around will be lifting them up, because that becomes an anchor. The library's not going anywhere. Be a great place to fix up or tear down and build a new house and have a wonderful resource right there.
Absolutely.
Because if we didn't go anywhere through all the trials and tribulations we had.
Yes, and there were a few.
There were a few. We're not going to go anywhere now. So has the pace of development in Peoria picked up? What's happening with businesses building things and coming in? And
I think it has. There's still some reluctance that we're feeling from the business community in terms of any substantial expansions or relocations. There's a general acceptance that the recession is over, but I don't know that everyone really feels that. A lot of the retail business in town is really dependent upon individual income and residential. And so if residential starts, if the single family building starts continue to increase, then in theory what's happening is that people are buying houses because they either A, have more money because they're working again, or B, they're willing to take out a mortgage because they have some assurance that they will have an income stream going forward in order to pay the mortgage. That obviously works well for retail, whether it be the mall or restaurants or any other type of customer-facing business, that if someone feels that they're comfortable enough to take out a mortgage and buy a house, or even take out a permit to do an expansion on the house, or to make, maybe they're going to gut their bathroom or their kitchen or whatever it might be.
Redo it.
Well, all of that drives additional retail, and it also drives additional jobs. That every one of the 156 houses that have been built so far in Peoria this year have included entire crews of people who, carpenters, plumbers, electricians, bricklayers, everyone, and all of them are now working, and that creates more income. And so, we hope to see this pace continue. The non-retail businesses in town, I think, although there's been expansion and overall the economy looks far better than it did just a couple of years ago,
Yeah.
I think there's still some caution, which is probably entirely appropriate. That we hope this is over. We hope things are better. So I guess if I were to sum it up, I'd say things are looking up, but no one, I think, is quite ready to say we're out of this. Everything is going to be hunky dory from this point forward.
Yeah, I think people have just been shook up too many times by, everything from the terrorist attack, in 2001 to all the financial nonsense that has gone on to natural disasters. That, of course, natural disasters displace people, cause great harm and pain, but then in the end there is rebuilding, and that does generate business and income.
Well, and that's sort of an unknown at this
Yeah.
point in terms of everything that happened on the other side of the river, and particularly in Washington. We would anticipate that the majority of the people displaced by the tornadoes will rebuild in Washington.
Right?
But that's a huge amount of construction,
Which could employ a lot of people
exactly.
from Peoria.
Exactly.
Who will bring the money.
Yeah,
back
exactly.
Here.
And that's we certainly would love to see that happen. We'd love to see some people choose to move over here to Peoria, but we're not going to go out there and try and recruit people to move.
Many of those people have lived there their whole lives, or their parents lived there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But in terms of and you hate to look at it this way, but in terms of an economic shot in the arm, the rebuilding of hundreds of houses within perhaps a calendar year next year, within the Peoria region, will employ an awful lot of people. It will.
And that'll be good for everybody.
Yes.
And hopefully heal some broken hearts
Yes.
over there.
Absolutely.
You talked about code enforcement, and I know there's a lot of people that get so angry when they get a ticket about their long grass, or they didn't know they couldn't put that fence or that shed or whatever. And I don't think that's the majority of people, but how do people find out what the rules are? If they want to know, okay, I'm going on vacation for 3 weeks, do I really have to hire somebody to mow my lawn while I'm gone? Or I'm going to put this little shed here and nobody cares.
Sure. The vast majority of Peoria residents will never have any interaction with our code enforcement people.
Right.
Unfortunately, there are some property owners who, either through ignorance of the law or just ignoring it, will have an interaction with code enforcement. And anyone who has a question about what a code violation is or what constitutes a code violation can always call, and we'd be happy to tell them exactly what it is. For the tall grass, it's 10 inches. I can assure you that around here, grass itself won't grow to 10 inches tall. It's weeds that grow 10 inches tall.
Right.
So if someone goes on vacation for 2 weeks, even if it rained every morning and the sun came out every afternoon when they were gone, the grass itself would not be 10 inches tall by the time they came back. Now, if they have a property that has a lot of weeds on it, then very well the weeds could be more than that. But in terms of what we call environmental violations with code enforcement, it's tall grass and weeds, it's garbage that has ended up on someone's property. It's either something that the property owner did or someone else threw the garbage on your property. But the reality is that if you live on a street and there happens to be a fast food place up the road, and
you're gonna get garbage.
And the timing is such that the milkshake is done just as the car passes your property and the person decides they're going to toss it out the window, unless there's a police officer who sees the person tossing the milkshake out of the window, it's the responsibility of the property owner to go out there and pick it up. So it's weeds, litter, garbage, any type of litter, junk cars. We get a lot of junk cars, and really a junk car is really just an inoperable vehicle, and that could be a vehicle that isn't drivable because it won't start, it doesn't have any wheels, the tires are flat, or if it's unlicensed, that's an inoperable vehicle. we receive a lot of complaints about people doing work on cars. And that's fine if you're working on your own car in your driveway. Where we begin to have problems is when someone is running an auto repair business out of their house. And unfortunately, we have situations where we'll go out to a property and there's a chain over the branch of a tree pulling the engine out of a car, which is sitting in the front lawn on jacks. And nobody should have to look at that. The people around that property should never have to look at that. Housing code violations, again, it's things that you would assume. Broken windows, door broken in. It's a lot, particularly on the exterior, it's a lot of really superficial items that generally can be repaired relatively inexpensively. And it's maintenance items.
People can't maintain. And this is where some of the organizations and some of the grants you have an elderly person, or a person who's unemployed, doesn't have the resources to make those repairs. Right. They can contact all sorts of different places to find help.
Absolutely. And I think on code enforcement, what everyone needs to understand is that if it's a first interaction with code enforcement, the property owner will receive a warning. We always give the property owner an opportunity to remedy the violation before we take it to the next step of issuing a ticket or issuing a work order. The only exception to that is abandoned properties or vacant lots. Where if there's a violation there,
you're done.
We're going to take care of it. Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking time to come and talk. I think people will find this very interesting. And of course, they can use the resources at the library to find out a lot about all of these things. So I'm glad you could come.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us on Information Please. Remember, the library has all sorts of events going on all the time, as well as resources to help you with things like development or building a house or how you even start. You can find all sorts of information on our website at peoriapubliclibrary.org, and we'll see you next week on Information Please.